Hey everyone, and welcome to our first ever Ocean Nomads Tribe interview. In this series, I'll be sitting down with inspiring digital nomads who have embraced a life of adventure and freedom. We'll dive into their journeys, how they started, what they do for work, and the lessons they've learned along the way. My goal is to bring you practical insights and real life inspiration to help you build your own nomadic lifestyle. Let's get into it. Now, I'm really excited to welcome our first guest, Daniel. Daniel is a full time employee in a job that allows him to work remotely from all around the world. Recently, Daniel has spent time in Colombia, Australia, North America, just to name a few. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. I'll do this for free every day of my life. I love the sound of my own voice. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for having me on. I love it. It's going to be good. This concept is great. I think there's no one really doing that in this space. I don't feel like there's much long form content in this type of space. So, yeah, it's a great concept.
There's so many ways to live that digital nomad lifestyle. So I'm really looking forward to getting into your story. You and I have been hanging out since this morning,
Yep.
and for the
Since 5 a.m. Yep.
yes,
5 a.m. sharp.
we are in Manly by the beach in Australia, so it's very much an early morning, go to the
Yeah.
beach, get your exercise culture, and this is your third time in Sydney, so I thought you had to experience that. So
No, it reminds me definitely of the Gold Coast where I was spending quite a bit of time. People are up at 4 a.m. Like run clubs start at 4:30. It's just an early place, and I think this is definitely like that. It reminds me of Burleigh a lot. It's a really cool spot, and it's a good. You got a nice place here. The location is you just 10 meters. No, let's say what is it? 200 meters from the beach, 400 meters from the beach. It's
yeah,
great.
yeah, very close. It's amazing.
Fortunate.
It's like paradise here. But for the listener's background, you and I have actually known each other since 2017 we met, but it's been since we both relocated since then.
hmm
We haven't been following each other's journey really until now. So I can't wait to reconnect. We've been holding off on sharing our stories up to this point all day
Yeah.
so that we can hear it for the first time here.
Yep, definitely. I mean, sometimes it's hard. You just want to catch up on everything, but kept a few things in the tank so that it will be the first time you hear it live, so that it's not a fake reaction. Sometimes, yeah, I've done podcasts in the past where you just rehashing stuff you already know. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Can't wait to get
Really
into
fun.
it. So let's start with, can you give us a snapshot of where you're at today? So how would you describe your lifestyle? What's important to you? Where do you base yourself?
Yeah, so I guess to answer the last question first, I'm not really based in one country at the moment. I've definitely been country hopping pretty regularly since 2023. For the next 6 months, I'm going to be in Canada or North America. Spend some time in the US and some time in Canada. A mix of being both for work and as you might have mentioned earlier, as you mentioned earlier, I used to live there, so got a good network there. Before that, I was basically living the remote lifestyle, working remotely, traveling. Um, Spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia. So basically, started in started in Bali and started in the Philippines actually. Made my way through Bali, Vietnam, and yeah, back to Bali after that as well. So I guess yeah, we can go. So what I'm doing right now in terms of work, so I work full time for a drone services and manufacturing company that's based out of Tasmania. So came from Tassie to Sydney, and I'll be heading to North America tomorrow. I'm a business development manager, so business development's kind of funny. You can just literally be anything. It's like the most vague title, but affects essentially one line sentence. It's new customer acquisition and driving new business into the company, or new revenue, I should say, into the company. And there's multiple ways to do that. You can do that face to face in conferences, through online outreach, overseeing marketing campaigns, So trying to basically grow Taz Drone Solutions into a global powerhouse in the drone industry. So yeah, that's kind of what I do right now. And I guess if we rewind it back to how I got there, so yeah, always wanted to work online. I thought that was such a cool way to make money. You know, you just see that the image of this person like pulling out their laptop on a beach. It's always on a beach. Like it's
Not
the
that you
amount of
can realistically work on a
honestly,
beach,
I've never
but
done that.
no,
I've
no,
actually never gone
me
to a
neither.
beach to work from there, but the idea was that you bring your MacBook to the beach, you open it up, you jump on the Wi-Fi, you make $1,000 that day, or whatever it is. That was in the back of my head the
And
entire time I wanted to get into this.
and when did that idea start for you? Do you remember where you were in life and how it came about?
Um, I would say after I went to Europe in 2016, so I went to like a private school. I got straight into university, so it was very much like drilled into me. Go to university, get a degree. So I went and did that. I did half a degree, dropped out. I didn't enjoy it, and then I got a job in sales. It's funny enough now what I do, but this is back when I was 19, selling houses to like first homeowners. It was such a shady industry, but they equipped me with some good life skills, like knowing how to talk to people. Really, yeah, that was a really cool job in the end. Um, and then I was like, I want to travel. Like I got the travel bug, I guess. I went to Bali a few times. Classic like Aussie guy goes to Bali with like 8 friends and doesn't interact with anyone else except their group. That was me. And then me and my buddy went to Japan, and that was kind of my first trip traveling. And then I was like, fuck it, I want to like go to Europe. Like everyone does that in Australia. It's a big rite of passage. Euro summer.
Yep,
So
or gap year.
gap year, take some
Yeah.
time off. So then I would say when I went to Europe 2016 and I started staying in hostels, it was sort of when I first heard about people working online, and I sort of went, fuck, you know what? That was such a cool job.
And was that before or after you'd moved to Canada?
Before. So this is when I was
Right.
22. So yeah, Europe was like kind of the big turning point, I guess, when it came to life. Like for more ways than one. I would say it was, you know, the first time I'd ever stayed in a hostel, the first time I'd solo traveled, and as you know, can be quite tough. I'm pretty normally quite a loud person, as you've heard in my meetings today, but I think so. I was able to meet people pretty easily, um, and I've never really been nervous to interact with strangers, but that was definitely the first one. I was like, okay, I want to keep doing this. How do I do that? Also, after that, so before that trip, I had started looking into the working holiday in Canada. So I was thinking about it. I decided to, before I went away, I actually booked an agency. I was like, help me get a job in Canada. But I didn't really know what I was signing up for. I just was like, I just want to leave Australia, get a experience a different country.
So you always had a bit of
Yeah,
that
always.
nomadic, adventurous mindset, even before you really realized it.
Yeah, before Europe, I was still planning to do this working holiday, but then when I went to Europe, it reinforced that I was made the right call. So went to Canada in 2016, and honestly, like for the longest time, it was hospitality. It was just it was an easy buck. You can go any bar, any restaurant, and especially in Canada, like the money's good. Like I was making pretty good money as a bartender, like in tips. So you live a good lifestyle, won't lie. Like, you know, typically in Canada, you're working with very good looking girls in restaurants. As you're from Calgary, it's like, Cactus Club and all those places. It's like they hire attractive people because it's a service based industry, tips based industry. So you're around good looking people. You want to have fun, let loose after a hard shift. Everyone's drinking, having fun. You make good money. It's kind of a perpetuating cycle, and a lot of people don't get out of that. Like I know people still, you know, in their 40s serving because they make really. It's hard to leave that industry, and honestly, in the back of my head, I knew I didn't want that to be me. But the
Yeah.
longer I was in there, I was like, fuck, like it's hard for me to leave. So when I got back to Australia, I was like, okay, how do I get out of that industry. Went back to uni.
And
So
for some people, that industry, they'd thrive and absolutely love it for their whole lives. But, for you, it
yeah,
wasn't the right place for you to stay. So,
yeah.
so you went back to uni.
Went back to uni. Got my
Were you finishing the degree that you'd started?
yeah. I was back and did finance and marketing. So I was always working hospitality the whole time behind in uni. Always working job. I have such an appreciation for that industry, and actually, one of the biggest icks of mine is people that are rude to like waiters and stuff, like hospitality stuff. I just think because I was there, I was in it for like so long that's like it's a big thing for me. So
It's a bit of a rite of passage, and I feel like everybody should, at some point in their lives, work in retail, in hospitality, in those really customer-facing environments, because you really, learn how to treat people.
100%, yeah. You get empathy. If you're out in a cafe, the coffee's taking a long time. It's like okay, there's probably a reason why. Same thing with bars, and you have a respect for them. They work hard, they work nights, they work long hours. Aside from North America, they don't get paid very well. Like you can, you know, for the amount of work that you do. I remember in London, I was like I was working so hard for like not much reward. So yeah, always had an appreciation for that. Yeah,
So you went from working in the service
yeah.
industry, you're studying in uni, you're in Canada.
hmm
Your life looks quite different now. So take us through what happened in between, and how do you move from, that location-based employment, trying to settle your life in one spot, to now having a remote job.
Yeah, good. It's a good question. So never thought it was really ever going to happen, but long story short, I moved to London with my ex-partner, and when I was in London, that was like my last straw. I was like, we ended up splitting up, and I was like, I don't want to be in this industry anymore. So I basically just started looking online for jobs whilst I was in London, and I actually found a job working in the Philippines. And it sounded kind of dodgy on paper, but I was like, oh, like it'll be fine. Went to the Philippines, to Manila. I haven't told you this. Went to Manila. I walk into this office, and it's a zero salary job. It's 100% commission. They're like, we want you to call expats in the Philippines and try and get them to invest their like savings with us, kind of thing. I had no experience. I knew I'd interviewed for the role, and I knew it was sort of a sales job. It was kind of vaguely described.
So
So this is getting to the next, I guess, how I got to the first remote job. So I lasted 3 days. So I get to the Philippines. I do 3 days of this job. I'm like, this is a fucking joke. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm getting a remote job. That's what I said.
so I mean, I just want to stop there and say that this is quite brave of you to go on a bit of a
Yeah.
whim on a job description that you describe as sounding sketchy. You've interviewed for it, but you don't really know what it is, and you basically moved to the Philippines.
Yeah, it sounds
What
kind
were
of
you thinking?
crazy, actually.
What was that going through your mind at all,
Uh,
or
the
was it?
longer, yeah, the more research I did on the company afterwards, the more I was like, yeah, there was really bad reviews, and there was like, it's all a bit of a scam. I don't know. I think in hindsight, I knew it was definitely not the right job, but I just was like, it's an opportunity to go and work in Manila, and I just was like, this I'd never been there, never been to the Philippines. By the way, Manila's fucking shithole, hate it. Um, Philippines is great.
I I
Philippines
mean,
is
I only
amazing.
spent a
You
few
spent a
hours in
night in an
Manila.
Airbnb near the airport and left
People
the
were
next
very,
day.
very kind, so
Okay, yeah.
I had a
Well,
good experience.
I really didn't think it was a cool city, but the reason, what really lit a fire up my ass to get my act together and find a remote job was this job. So I got there. I was like, I'm not doing this. I quit after 3 days or 4 days, I think. Um, and I just jumped on LinkedIn, and I was just like, I'm gonna find remote work. I don't care if it's paying $200 a week. I got a cold call. I don't care if I just someone's account, like sending their calendar. Like it didn't matter to me the actual type of work. I just want to make an online income. So yeah,
So you
basically
were,
just started prospecting for that, and found one. It was uh, basically a real estate company that was a company that was helping real estate agencies set more listings, and I was responsible for calling in inbound marketing leads trying to set appraisals basically. So yeah, just DM'd a guy on LinkedIn like that was advertising. He liked that I was direct and had a good approach. And yeah, my previous real estate experience, remember when I started working in sales, he was like, "Oh, it's cool that you've worked in real estate." So I did that, and I was making $300 Australian a week, which is 200 US dollars a week,
A week. And just for
800 a month.
context, yeah, if you were living in Australia, your rent
Oh,
would
I'd be
be
homeless.
more than $300 a week
I mean, I'd
generally.
be on the streets in
So,
Perth.
so it's very low income.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
but tell us a little bit more about when you were going through that search.
Yeah.
Did you use LinkedIn only, or did you have any other
I use
platforms?
Seek.
See,
So I have a really tailored strategy to getting like interviews. So, part of what I do right now is booking meetings. That's BDM, business development, just booking meetings from cold emails and cold DMs. That's kind of a big chunk of my job.
yeah,
So,
because these remote jobs there's more interest for them in general. So
they're highly
you obviously
competitive.
have a way, highly competitive. You've got a way of getting in the door,
Yeah.
getting interviews.
Yeah, these are the two biggest things not to do when looking for a remote job. So, the first thing is do not send your resume to anybody. That's going to sound counterintuitive, but hear me out. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry that ever wanted a remote job is just going to spam send their resume on LinkedIn or on Seek or on Indeed. Now, unless you are the world's best candidate for that role, you're not going to get an interview. You'll just, especially if you use Easy Apply on LinkedIn. So don't send your CV and don't use ChatGPT to write a personalized cover letter. So cover letters are dead. Cover letters used to be handwritten letters that you would post to a company back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, specifically targeting why you want to be working at that company. Now everybody uses AI and it's not a personalized cover letter. It's a generic template. You're just putting in the company name. So everyone knows that. So those are the two things. Don't do those. This is what I would do. And this is what I did. So you use LinkedIn Jobs and Seek to find the companies hiring remote positions. When you have the company and the role, you go back to LinkedIn and you search the company on LinkedIn. And under people, it'll list all the names of the employees in the company. And you find, depending on what role you're going, let's say you're going for a marketing role, find the director of marketing, find the HR manager, and find even if it's a small company, even the CEO. If it's a big company, maybe like VP of sales or something like that. And try and firstly connect with them. But if they don't accept your connection, there are many tools you can use to get their work email. There's plenty of programs out there you can get their work email. You can pretty much guess it. So most people's emails is firstname.lastname@company.com. That's my email. No, actually it's not, but it's similar. So there's usually only three formats: first name dot last name, first name at, or first initial last name at company.com. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't be doing cold outreach. And this is the biggest tip, is to master cold outreach when looking for remote jobs. So that's exactly what I did. I found the company hiring, I found the director's name, and I messaged him on LinkedIn.
And I'm assuming you got a response because you then got the job.
So I do that for like 5 or 6 companies. So like with anything, you're not going to bat 100. You're not going to get every job or every message. No, they're not going to respond to every message you send. It's really just a numbers game, but not just throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks. Finding companies in your niche. So where most people have something to offer. So even somebody that has no experience has something to offer. It could be they've traveled the world, they've got great stories, they've got a great personality, hard work and determination. Like somebody has, even if you're going for an entry level role, you have something unique to offer. So find the companies that will embrace that. Or if you have experience, for example, you worked in finance and accounting, find those jobs, those companies that are hiring for those jobs, and make it a targeted outreach. So you increase your chances of getting replies. But yeah, I emailed like 5 or 6 people, DM'd 5 or 6, got a few responses, and ended up getting offered a position. Now that was the really, really low paying one.
but
The,
it's a start
but that I
in
didn't
the
care. This is
direction
the
you
funny
wanted.
thing. So I didn't even care. I was like, I'll just take anything. I don't even care if it's $100 a week. Like I remember, like I was in the Philippines, and so when I actually got hired, I was in Bali. So I went from I'd finished my month in Boracay on the Philippines, and then I flew to Bali. And now Aussies will go, oh, Bali's actually not that cheap. It is actually cheap if you don't go to La Brisa and La Favela and Old Man's and the Finn's Beach Club every night and spend $100. I was living in Ubud. I would go to eat at Warungs, which are like really local places. Like you can eat for $3. I was full. Like I ate a lot. I ate big portions, and I was spending $4 or $5, and I eat and being full. Rent was I think I was paying $20 a night Australian, which was 600, which is like $350 US a month. Um, Now, are you living luxuriously? Fuck no, man. It's like a guest house. Probably hot water doesn't work. Electricity's in and out. But at that time, this was October 2023. I didn't care what I did. It was like, I don't care if I just do anything. I just want to make an income online, and then I know it will build from there. So that was the first one. I hated it. Honestly, I hated the job. I didn't like what I was doing. I knew I wasn't helping anybody. It was in honestly, I think it was a bit of the ads. They said it was marketing Facebook ads, but every time I called someone, they'd be like, "I didn't send an inquiry." So the work was shit, but it was something like you said.
Yeah, it was a start in the right direction.
Hmm.
And so over time,
Yeah.
you how did you get the job that you've got now? Because you're now living, imagine you've got a bit of a higher income, you're able to live a bit of a different lifestyle.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So basically, from when I had this job, and then I reconnected with an old friend of mine who I'd met, funnily enough, that Europe trip I told you about in a hostel. He started a drone company a year after I met him, and he had grown this business. And we would catch up like every few months, and he'd tell me about it. But I didn't really know much about drones. I don't think anyone really did at that time, like 2018. So yeah, I knew he had a company. That was all I knew. Um, I messaged him on Instagram or Facebook. Just wanted to catch up, and he mentioned that his company is really expanding. And I was like, look, I'm living in Bali. I'm looking for some remote work. Is there any way I can help? And he just basically said, look, yeah, there is. I don't really know what the role is yet, but there is a way you can help. You can start out like 10 hours a week. I'll pay you like $20 an hour. So I had that plus the other one. So I had 200 plus 300. So it went up to like $500 a week. And then once I started working for Andrew, who's my friend and now current boss, the company was doing some amazing things, and like really just, I was very fulfilled, even though only 10 hours a week doing research. I was basically just doing research on companies they could possibly like, target. And I said, look, is there a way to go like part time? And he was like, yeah, like, I think we could get you on part time, like 20 hours a week. So I got on 20 hours a week, and I just sacked off the other job. I hated it anyways. And I just went 20 hours a week with Taz Drones for 4 months. So that's when I was in Bali. So the whole time I lived in Bali, and anybody listening to this from Australia is going to think it's crazy. I was making $500 a week, but saving $100. Like I was saving money because I was just like not living that lifestyle of like going out. I was going out, but I wasn't spending a lot of money, and I was still able to like save $500 a month because of how I was living. So yeah.
And that's a good thing to touch on because while you're traveling and experiencing the world, a lot of people would just put saving for the future on hold. So has that always been something that you've sort of
Yeah, I should
thought about?
say though that when I say saving, it was like I was saving to then like fly somewhere else. So I
Okay,
wasn't
saving to
like
fund
save.
future
Yeah, I was saving
travels.
to fund future memories. Let's put it that way. Um, yeah, so definitely now I'm thinking more long term about saving money. Like, obviously I want to eventually have somewhere to live full time. I don't think that'll be in Australia. I just don't think I would ever buy a house here unless, I mean, it's just you, unless I get a huge mortgage, and then I'm tied here forever or for that period of time. I see myself honestly looking at buying overseas, like, less developed country, and then living there part time and renting out, say Bali, for example. You can spend 200 grand and own some land and a villa, live there 6 months of the year, and then rent it out. That's realistically what I would think.
Yeah, and for those listening who may not be aware, the Australian real estate prices, especially in the cities, are quite high. Aussies love their property.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit ridiculous about how expensive real estate is and rentals are here. But in saying that, yeah, you can get great quality of life, no doubt about that. But but yeah, so Bali, February I left Bali, went to Tassie. That's where the company is based, and then I went full time after that trip. So I went to Tasmania, and then after that I had like a review, and I went full time. So I went from 20 to 40 hours a week, and at that point I was pretty self sufficient in Southeast Asia. Like I didn't have to think too much about money. Like it was just like it wasn't like when I was in Bali, I was scraping pennies together. But when I went full time, it certainly made it easy. And that's when I went to Japan, I went to Canada, and then I pivoted into South America. This was around July last year.
So you really built this lifestyle over time. It
Yeah.
wasn't something that you stepped straight into from day one. You were willing to take on initially the lower paying jobs just to get the
Oh yeah.
start remote working.
Yeah.
And you changed and managed your lifestyle accordingly as you got there.
Yeah. Basically, there is a bit of lifestyle inflation. Like as you get more money, you spend more and you then want more kind of thing. I think, but being humble and be like, I'll take what I can get to start. Like if you offer value, people will reward you for that. Like if I knew if I did a good enough job with Tas Drones that Andrew would put me full time, and that was the overarching goal for like 5 months. Is like, okay, I just want to go full time because I go full time, I can pretty much live anywhere I want, remote. Um, Now, could I live in New York City, LA, Sydney, and live a great life? Probably not, because it wasn't enough for that. But it was enough to live in Colombia for 3 months, live in Costa Rica, live in Panama, live in Peru, live in Bali. So, and that was my goal. Now again, like the goalposts keep getting shifted. So instead of now because I was a subcontractor the whole year, basically. I was like invoicing, had an ABN. Now I'm a full-time employee with the company. I have my, super, you got bonuses and all that stuff. So it's, as you can see, it's like in stages of becoming fully legitimate now. And yeah, I'm honestly really enjoying the work and it's been good. But we can go back to Colombia and Peru if you want.
Yeah, well, I'll just explain a couple of those terms for our non-Australian listeners. The ABN being your business number,
Yep.
and superannuation being your retirement fund savings.
That's right. Yeah. So superannuation, yeah, just basically money that your employer has to contribute as part of a percentage of your salary every year to your retirement, which is in Australia is actually the highest in the world. Mandatory 11.5% and will go up to 15 over the next 5 years or so, which is kind of crazy. That's like on top of your package or salary. But yeah, so Colombia, lived there for 3 months, learnt Spanish. Peru was great. South America versus Southeast Asia, like South America is so different in safety, cost, people, culture, everything. It's like inverse of Southeast Asia.
Right. Do you want to touch on a few of those differences? Because that's quite interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So Southeast Asia, you can pass out in a ditch, drunk as hell, wake up, your phone's next to you, your wallet's next to you, unscathed. South America, if you did that, you'd be probably mugged, robbed, even potentially worse. It's just a different game. You got to be careful. Colombia, even probably the most. And it's funny because I lived there for 3 months. The longer I spent there, the more I realized how dangerous it was. So I went in there like, okay, it's gonna be fine. As I spent more time there, I heard the stories of people getting robbed at gunpoint, at knife point, like drugged. It's a huge guys getting drugged by women in Colombia is massive now. So I would say the safety thing is just a big problem in Colombia and all of South America. Cost is so it's probably if you think Southeast Asia is like maybe a third of the cost of a Western country, I would say South America is maybe half to just over half. So it's not cheap if you talk if you got
Right.
backpackers, people that are on a shoestring budget. A lot of people skipped Costa Rica, Panama because of how expensive it is. You're paying like US Aussie prices there. So backpackers, South America is a lot more expensive. So you have to have more savings to make that trip last. Whereas Vietnam, Philippines, $30 a day, you're eating like a king, really. So that's the second thing. Third thing is language barrier. So you'd probably smart to learn a bit of Spanish if you're going to South America. It's actually quite hard to get around without it, unless you're on a tour group. People aren't really friendly when you don't speak Spanish. There's a very bad perception of Americans in South America, and as a white person, you fall into that gringo category. So initially, you're fighting an uphill battle. Now, if you're a nice person, if you're friendly, they will be friendly. They're not going to just be dickheads to you, but it's it's the other way around in Southeast Asia. They love Westerners. They're so friendly. They want to speak English with you.
Well, the topic of safety leads really well into another question I want to ask you, which is about travel insurance. Now, it's something that's really important that I hope you have. So I do want to ask, do you have travel insurance, and what kind of travel insurance?
Yeah, I have it. I have travel insurance. It's I got it online, so travelinsurancedirectcom. It's a
And it
shameless plug. Good, they're sponsoring the show. No, they're not. I'm just kidding.
and
Yeah,
is that a policy that covers you everywhere, or do you
yeah.
buy that for a specific location?
So this one covers worldwide. I think it's $400 a year.
And when you say $400, are you talking Australian or US dollars?
Australian, the worst currency on earth right now, Australian dollars. Yes. So it's
So
like
nearly double.
200 US dollars.
Yeah.
No, it's like 250 USD. Australian, the dollar is a joke. Literally a joke. I'm going to the States tomorrow. I'm flying to LA and God help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to
Where
take
will
out a
you be
loan.
eating?
Oh,
At home.
I'll be probably cooking at home and drinking a lot of beers.
Water.
So Super Bowl Sunday, it's gonna be a big one. I actually got a 5K fun. So my buddy has booked us in to do a fun run on the Super Bowl in the morning.
So you can
Uh,
start the day
Start the
off
day off
nicely.
great, and then gradually decline over time, is the plan. Yeah, so yeah, you gotta have travel insurance, guys. It's never worth not having, and I've gone months without it in the past where I just should. It's just like why not? Like insurance is one of those things that you just hope you buy it, but hope you never need it.
Absolutely.
If you don't have it, you're in Southeast Asia, you're fucked.
Yeah, it's just not worth taking the chance, right? Because not having it could mean your life is changed forever.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
I
If
know
something
it's like
happens.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. And by the way, if you get injured, seriously injured in Southeast Asia, they won't actually operate on you until that you've sent the money. So I had a friend of mine like fall off a roof and break both his legs. He nearly died. His family needed to raise 100 grand and wire it to Indonesia before they would like operate on him because that's just the law there. Whereas in the US and in Australia, regardless if you don't have the money, they will operate and fix you, but then there will be a massive bill if you're in the US. Australia's, I don't think, it depends. If you're a citizen, there's no bill, I don't think.
I think if
Medicare.
you went, yeah, I think.
Or it's very low, very low. But yeah, either way, don't sleep on travel insurance.
Now, one question I'm keen to ask you is how you balance your work commitments while you're traveling. Because, of course, when you're in a new country, you want to explore, you might be around people who aren't working.
It's tough to do that actually. Because you don't want to be the boring guy in the hostel. And the first point is if you really want to be productive, if you really want to be on top of your game work wise, you can't really stay in hostels unless you're staying in the private rooms. And even still, I would say because of the environment, the bar downstairs, music playing, you're not going to be at the top of your game. So I stayed in hostels a little bit when I was in South America, predominantly Airbnbs. Always found that I worked better staying in Airbnbs. So the best way to balance work commitments and having really fun experiences is go to the hostels at night, but avoid staying there as your accommodation. Try and find Airbnbs or co-living spaces, co-working spaces that have accommodation in order to be, on top of your game productivity-wise. But you can still go to the hostels on your weekend, be social. I'd find another way is like joining community groups. So joining like sport teams, social leagues. It's a great way to meet people without drinking, because I find that the drinking culture in places like Southeast Asia and South America, Central America, is just everywhere. It's hard to not to escape that if you're in a hostel.
Yeah, and you want to surround yourself as much as you can with, I guess, like-minded people who are also working, if you want the most productive environment.
100%.
That's another good point to touch on, is the social connections when you're, as you have been for the last year, moving from destination to destination every few months. Have you found that you've been able to build deeper connections with people or stay connected with people back home to have that friendship aspect?
Um, Look, it's not easy. I would say it's not like the whole like go to a new city every week life that it looks great. I don't think it's as great as everyone thinks it is. It is hard to maintain really strong friendships with people because you meet somebody. I met so many people traveling that I'm like, I could be this guy's best friend back home, or this girl's really cool. Maybe there's something there and explore that, but they leave the next day. So it's tough. In terms of friendships at home, look, I'm a big believer in quality, not quantity, of people, of friendships. So I've got 2 to 3 really good mates in Australia that, I can call them any time of the day. They'll answer. We'll chat for hours. But yeah, you fall out of touch. You definitely fall out of touch with people.
How have you found or what strategies have you found help you to stay in touch with those few key connections?
I FaceTime people a lot. Big fan of FaceTime and voice notes. I think they're just way better to be more, relatable. It's like you're almost there. I am bad with family. Like, I should call them more often. I'm in touch with my family through social media a lot. Like, we send each other stuff on Instagram and DM on Facebook. But in terms of like calling, yeah, probably need to improve that. But yeah, I just find like, video calling people, yeah, trying to just be as present as you can and just keeping them up to date with what you're doing week to week is the best way.
Because it's very easy to live your exciting life and go from adventure to adventure and forget to fill the people in back home.
Yeah, I post a lot on social media, so that's kind of my way to communicate where I am and what I'm doing. That's kind of like, I think if I don't post a story or something or a post for like a few weeks, my mum might be like, "Oh, like, is everything all right?" Like, because I'm just quite active on those platforms, so that's kind of a way to keep them informed. But yeah, you definitely want to keep everyone up to date and give them an update every now and again. Make sure you're alive.
Yeah, a little bit goes a long way. What are the 3 biggest challenges of being a digital nomad?
So number one is definitely staying on top of your productivity. And the best way to combat this is by not staying in hostels. So choosing your accommodation is super important. My suggestion is pick an Airbnb near a hostel that you want to stay at during the week. Stay out of touch. Just grind it out. Do your work. And then on the weekends, you can be social, get amongst it, get on the drinks. But I would say being productive is one of the biggest challenges. Second biggest challenge is being disconnected from your team. And I face this a little bit. If you're the only one or the one of 2 people that are remote, it's actually you actually feel a little bit disconnected from the rest of your full-time team that are spending every day in the office together. Um, one way that we're combating this year is I think we're going to have a lot more times at conferences. And part of my job, it is my job to go out there to different parts of the world and get business for us. So that is what I do. But when you're always remote, working from home, you can feel a little bit disconnected. And the third one is loneliness overall. You know, being a remote worker, working from anywhere, it is glamorized a little bit, but a lot of the time you're in a room by yourself, in a house by yourself. You know, you might eat 3 meals a day by yourself for a week. You know, if you're not a super social person, it can be hard to actually make friends in a new country. You know, people aren't jumping at you trying to be your friend just down the street. So definitely you've got to get involved. You know, I know for you that's surfing. For me, might be getting on the drinks a little too much, but find a way to getting into the community and you won't feel so lonely.
Do you have any equipment that you would consider necessary for either traveling or working remotely?
I would say it's an obvious one, but a local SIM or an international SIM card. So it's like you're not trying to battle for Wi-Fi, and you know, even when you land, you can either get an eSIM or use an international SIM and just find your data immediately, get your Uber. That's kind of a non-negotiable. A laptop case. I know people, it's kind of, again, an obvious one, but I didn't have a case for my laptop for such a long time, and it was like scratched everywhere and stuff like that. So
And are you talking one of the hard cases that goes
just
right
like a
on
soft
it,
one, like,
or
you know,
okay, one
like
to
the one
pack it away
one that
in?
you can pack away easily with, like, in your bag, and it's not just hitting everything else in your bag. And travel light, like, so a lighter suitcase, maybe something that you can ideally, like, I have a huge suitcase. It's not ideal. Like, I would rather travel light, like, without one. But if you're in like hot countries, you can definitely get away with just carry on. So you don't need you don't need, think of how much you're going to bring and just halve it, because you're not going to use a lot of it.
Now, to round it out, I have two final questions that I wanted to ask you.
Let's go.
So the first one is, what's something that you didn't consider that became apparent to you once you started living the digital nomad lifestyle?
Unreliability of Wi-Fi around the world, and what that necessarily means for productivity, and, you know, stressing out because you have a meeting and the Wi-Fi and the hostel's down. You know, coming from Australia, you're used to having reliable internet or reliable electricity wherever you go. So if you have a Wi-Fi router, it's not going to run out. Something I didn't consider was electricity blackouts while I'm in a meeting, or while I've got a meeting coming up, stressing out. So plan for the worst. Embrace these are going to these things will happen if you're going to work remotely from Southeast Asia, South America, these sort of more developed countries, developing countries, I should say. Things like this were going to happen, so you got to just embrace it. It's part of it.
That reminds me a lot. Actually, I recently spent a lot of time in Siargao in the Philippines, and Siargao being quite a small island, they do frequently get blackouts. And within my first week of working remotely there, I had a very important meeting. I was presenting to the
Oh God.
CEO, the CFO, and I thought, all I need is for the Wi-Fi to hold out for this one call. And I was in a co-working space, so most reliable internet on the island. But I was holding my breath, just hoping that
Yeah.
everything would run smoothly.
Did it?
It did. It
Thank
did.
God.
Yeah.
Siargao is notorious for outages. It's still developing. It's like maybe what Bali was like 10 years ago. That's what everyone says.
Yeah.
I've never been.
Not long after I left, they went 2 weeks without power on the entire
what?
island.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It's an amazing place,
Yeah.
though. I would highly recommend. Now, my final question is, to round it out, what's the biggest tip or takeaway for somebody that wants to build this remote work lifestyle?
So understand what your niche is, in terms of if you're looking to prospect for work to find that first role that you enable you to be a digital nomad and work remotely. You really need to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are and just focus on that, because you can also get caught up in trying to do a bit of everything. Start a business, apply for a job, apply for 100 jobs. Before you even start looking at at prospecting for work, find what you're good at and focus in on that. Once you have an idea of the exact role you're looking for and where you want to live, then you can go all out on it. The second thing is find where you want to live first, because that's going to dictate how much you need to make. So if you're happy to live in Vietnam, you can live easily on $1,500 a month. Bali maybe a little bit more than that, and then South America, $2.5 grand a month to $3 grand a month, and then anywhere in the developed world, you're looking at between 5 to 7K a month minimum to sustain a lifestyle. So start from the location. That will tell you how much you need to make, and then work backwards from there to figure out what you got to do to get that money in.
Amazing. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure hearing your story. And if the listeners want to follow along from here on out, where can they find you?
At Daniel versus the World, they can find me on Instagram. That's the only platform that I'm most active on. So yeah, it's been a pleasure being here. I've really been enjoying it. I could do this every day. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
I'm happy to be the one to pop the cherry of this fantastic concept.